Craig, we have to go through the events. Inter Milan losing at home, what seems like a long time since they've had a defeat at the San Siro, but at the hands
Yep.
of Udinese. Quite a surprising kind of way of the game flow. And in particular, I think a lot of credit has to be given to Udinese, but I think a lot of the Inter fan base are pointing fingers at Cristian Chivu for that performance. Obviously, we'll talk about VAR as well and the farcical decision in my eyes anyway. But how did you see the game unfold? And yeah, I think Udinese deserve a lot of credit, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the first thing to say is with Inter coming off the back of a 5-0 win the other week against Torino, I think we all expected Inter to go again. I think
Mm,
that's what we all expected, especially considering the firepower they've got in their team. Um, no way on earth did I think Udinese would take 3 points back to Udine. Never thought that.
no.
Um, especially with the loss of Lorenzo Luca, they don't have their man
Mm,
up front. I would have never seen that happen. Not even last season when they were essentially stronger. I would have never seen that. But like you say, 100% credit has to go to Udinese. They were solid. They were absolutely
mm,
solid. There was about at least 30 minutes in the second half towards the end of the game where it was constant into barrage. It was constant attack, attack, attack. And
mm.
they withstood it. They weathered the storm and ultimately got the game, got the 3 points.
Certainly did. I felt personally that maybe the deliveries and the creativity was lacking from an Inter perspective. And when you
Yes.
look at the kind of stats aside, it feels like maybe I'm talking a lot of rubbish there, but genuinely, as the game unfolded, it felt like the likes of DeMarco and Bastoni really struggled with their deliveries.
Mm.
As soon as they brought on the likes of Zielinski, even he kind of struggled to get a grip of the game itself. So I think a lot of credit
Exactly.
has to go to the way that Kostarunic set up his
Mm.
side. And in
Yeah.
particular, it was interesting when he did make the kind of, I suppose, substitution, in particular, bring on Adam Buksa, who I know
Yeah.
from his days in Poland, but more in
In Poland
particularly,
as well.
he's
Yeah.
kind of a really tall kind of striker
Mm.
that doesn't necessarily lend himself to a lot of pace, but he does put a
Yeah.
lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Interestingly, also Piotrowski, who they brought in from Ludogorets and from
Mm.
Bulgaria,
Yeah.
wasn't too sure what we would get in terms of performance. But again, he was
Mm.
kind of pushing and applying a lot of the intensity. So I think you could get a flavour for what Udinese were trying to do towards the latter
Absolutely.
part of the stages. But what I
Mm.
want to also allude to is the factor around into style of football under Chivu is obviously they're trying to apply a lot of pressure and be quick with the intensity.
Yeah.
But I feel the issues are that the fact that defensively they're always going to be quite fragile, especially with
Mm.
the kind of age of it, in particular the likes of De Vrij and the Cherby.
Acerbi
I
as
don't think
well.
they can really sustain a whole season. Now, it feels like maybe Inter have addressed that with the signing of Manuel Akanji today,
Akanji, yeah. Mm.
and that's
That
going to
could
be
definitely benefit them.
massive.
Yeah.
But what I was going to
Especially
say,
taking him
put
off
towards
Milan as
you,
well.
sorry, all I was going to do was put this to you. Do you think that's enough?
In terms of their defensive addition, I don't think it's enough. I think they could have done with maybe a little bit more bolstering. I think, as we've just touched on there, the age of their defenders, De Vrij, Acerbi,
Hmm.
those sort of defenders there are reaching the end of their career. There's a lot of pace in this area nowadays. The likes of Bastoni, I think you need another person like that, and I think Akanji could
Yeah.
be very, very good. I think we could see, well, exactly why they've picked him up in the first place, but also why Manchester City didn't keep hold of him essentially.
Yeah.
So we'll see that. But no, I mean even their fullbacks, for example, Dimarco, he's
Mm.
exceptional, but he's still getting on age wise. So I think a few more additions would be needed. They may add in January. I'm not too sure. But we'll see how this pans out. I think, like you say, though, they are shaky on the defence. Their attack is a lot more stronger than what the defensive is.
Definitely. What we have to do and give credit, I suppose, Inter was the way they applied themselves initially in
Yeah,
terms of getting themselves ahead in this match, in particular.
yeah,
Denzel Dumfries really taking and exploiting, I suppose, the fact that the Udinese defence were quite static at that moment. But
mm,
from then onwards, I felt with the likes of Atta, for example, in particular,
yeah,
and Keenan Davis even, they did apply a lot of pressure towards them.
mm,
And it was inevitable that the goal would kind of come
Yep.
But I suppose the manner that it did happen in terms of
Mm,
the opener, in terms of the equaliser for Udinese's
mm,
perspective anyway, was
yeah.
quite farcical from my point of view. Now, at that point, did you see VAR kind of maybe dismissing it, or did you feel it was going that way as the game unfolded, which was they reverted to the referee to make that decision?
I honestly think in this day and age now, you can't, you just, in the back of your head, you're just constantly thinking, whatever decision happens, VAR is going to intervene. I have no trust in referees now, and I don't think they have trust in themselves or they have any sort of belief that the decision that they've made on the field is the right one. So they go immediately
Mm.
to VAR. Of course, they've got them in their ear as well, intervening here and there. But I kind of expected VAR to intervene. I did. I have to
Do you
admit.
think? Do you think VAR needs to be a bit stronger though in those instances as well? Because it feels like at the moment they're scared to make those decisions as well.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think at the end of the day, they're the one that have got the TVs to play everything back. They're the ones who are sat in the room analysing everything as it
Mm.
happens in real time. I think they should be. At the end of the day, they are the support for the referee in the event that the referee seems to make a mistake. So 100%, they should have the
Mm.
guts to make that sort of decision and say, look, you've got that wrong.
One other aspect I want to kind of cover from an Inter point of view is the attack. And, we spoke offline about Turam having his goal kind of ruled off. But
Yeah,
again, I didn't think this was one of Turam's strongest performances.
no,
How do you see this season playing out? Because it feels like there's going to be a lot more pressure on the likes of Turam, Martinez, as well as maybe Wilfred Bonner as well, who came off the
yeah,
bench for this game.
yeah. I mean, two fantastic attackers. Let's not get that wrong. I mean,
Mm.
Lautaro, unbelievable striker. He really is. He'll crop up anywhere. He's got goals in him. The only thing he was struggling with last season was injury. So if he can stay
Yeah.
fit, I think he'll get goals. Turam, on the other hand, for me, is very hit and miss, very inconsistent. I think the likes of Pio Esposito could play on that
Mm.
inconsistency to try and get into the side. Maybe I would like to see that. I mean, if anyone listening did watch Spezia last season, they'll have known how much of a key role he played in their promotion push. Um, it was nice to see him get on last night. There wasn't a
Mm.
lot in way of delivery for him, as with a lot of strikers nowadays. We see a very lack of service. Um, but yeah, going back to the two of them, I think they're good enough. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. Um, but Taram, I think, is the weak point up there. I have to admit. He has his
Yeah.
good games, he has his bad games. Very inconsistent.
Yeah, I think that summarizes his season from last year.
Yeah,
I feel we didn't see the very best of Marcus Thuram, and it'll
yeah,
be interesting to see how this season in particular pans out for him. But
yeah.
it does bring me on to another point about this game. Omar Sole, his performance in particular was absolutely
Fantastic.
outstanding. Are you
Yeah.
surprised there weren't bigger clubs potentially after him? And I know there's been some speculation as to why potentially it hasn't happened, but
Mm.
actually there is a quality player that somehow Udinese were able to bring in from, I think it was Salzburg, wasn't it, at the time?
I think so,
And
yeah,
yeah,
Salzburg.
and somehow he's just another talent that seems to be at Udinese. So it's
Mm,
probably not long before we see him depart for a bigger club, but what a
100%.
performance we have to summarize, right?
Absolutely. I mean, he was an absolute brick wall last night. Every time they
Mm.
came down that left hand side, Dumfries was just not getting past him, was he really?
No.
Towards the end of it, anyway, he was just absolutely rock solid. Um, there was also the other defender. I can't quite remember his name now, but there was the other defender who was paired with absolutely stellar performance from him as
Yeah.
well. But yeah, no, I think it's these sort of players, your Soles, etc., that have a really good season, and then
Mm.
they start the other clubs start thinking, oh, hang on a second, we never heard about this guy, where did he come from? And then they start to listen then, and that's when you start getting your bigger clubs swarming around, etc. It's annoying because you think, well, where was the interest beforehand? Where was the interest before he made,
Yeah.
etc. The great performances at his club? But I suppose that's the positives and the advantages of being a bigger club. You can wait until they have a good season and then you can pounce essentially on them and offer the smaller club a lot of money. And 9 times out of 10, it works that way, doesn't it? Usually.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Well, this was a massive result for Udinese, and starting on a similar vein to last season, where they sort of
Yeah.
seemed to get this run together and maybe beat the odds of where people predict for them to be ending up by the end of this season. Certainly, I didn't think they would follow up from last season, but I have to put my hands up and say, Kostarunic, you definitely done me that occasion. Quick comment on this. A lot of Inter fans probably feeling that Cristian Chivu, if he doesn't turn this around, in terms of the performance levels, he won't have a lot of time there. How do you see his tenure going forward? Because it is going to be very difficult given the high expectation from that fan base as well, right?
This is it, exactly. I mean, it goes for both Milan clubs, doesn't it? All your clubs in Italy, the bigger ones, the pressure's on them immediately. It's a really tough job to go for. I was rather surprised he got appointed after spending such little time at Parma. I honestly was. I didn't think he was going to be the one that would take over at Inter, but he has. He couldn't have started any better, really, against Torino 5-0. Everyone's thinking, "Oh my days, fantastic! We've gotten a manager in that's going to take us to another Scudetto." But it's pressure on immediately. Even even if he'd have won 1-0, it's pressure on immediately, isn't it? I think we'll know a little bit better maybe I'd probably say in a couple of months' time, maybe, just to see where he sits, if he makes it to a couple of months, that is.
Yeah.
We all know how these clubs like to get rid of managers really, really quick. But no, I think Udinese is one of those. It's a game you never saw coming. They've succumbed to many losses against. I think their next home game is against this team, Sassuolo. They have beaten them so many times. They've stumbled. They've made them stumble so many times, etc. It could just be one of those games. They could go next week and in 2 weeks' time, and they could go on and win again. And you're thinking Kivu's the man. But yeah, we'll see. I think if he follows this one up with another loss, I think alarm bells will start going for some Interisti, I think. And
We
that's
shall
as quick as
wait
it
and
goes.
see.
It really is
exactly.
as quick. Even though there's been 3 games, that's sometimes all it takes for people to start doubting. It really is.
100%. 100%, especially with the patience of some of the Italian fan bases in